Next, we have an exciting opportunity to learn more about Ethereum community projects. Now, you may have seen a recent press release as this is actually brand new in the works, and we're so excited to bring back to the stage Dan Burnett, Executive Director of the EEA, and Guy Martin, Oasis Open Executive Director. They're going to tell us a lot more about this exciting project.
Thanks, James.
Take it away, guys.
All right. Hey, you want to say hello, Guy? They've seen my face already for a few secs.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Guy Martin, Executive Director of Oasis Open, and I'll let Dan kick this off because this was a partnership between the two of us, but was initiated by Dan and the EEA. So, Dan, it's only right that you should go first to announce.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we made an announcement just a few weeks ago, so this is fairly recent. I'm gonna start a little bit with a little bit of the history of the EEA. When the EEA started, and actually for most of its history, the focus was on standards, and we still do standards. That's the majority of what we do. I've been doing standards for several decades in the web and internet space, and one of the things I can say about that is that traditionally, you have a number of companies, each with proprietary implementations, which you'll never see, right? You won't see their implementations. But for a variety of reasons, they decide that they need to interoperate. And that leads to a discussion about creating a standard. So they get together, they have meetings, they work on writing up a standard, they create a test suite, and then they run their implementations against that test suite, and then that provides some indication that they are conformant to the specification. And then there's some hope of interoperability there. Now, that's kind of the traditional way that standards development occurs. One of the things that we were noticing in the Ethereum space is that things are happening in a little bit of a different way, where someone would create an open source implementation first. Now, keep in mind that's one implementation, but then they would realize that they needed others, whether it was other implementations of the same thing in other languages, whether it was other independent implementations. They wanted to enable multiple implementations that all interoperated. And so that actually led to a desire to go from an open source implementation to a standard. And it's a little bit different because now you have a community that's used to an open source way of working that needs to expand that into a standard, but do it in a proper way so that you end up with a good quality standard at the end. Now, this is something that, so actually this is like my 1-year anniversary with the EEA also. I joined a year ago. And one of the things that I wanted to do was open up the EEA more than it was. And a big part of that is to find a way to accommodate more of the community-driven projects. So as many of you know, Baseline is has been one of the Ethereum Oasis Open projects. And that really is a great example of exactly what I'm talking about. So in partnership with Oasis, we now have something new. There's a managed open project. I'll let Guy talk about that in a little bit. But now this collection of projects, including Baseline, is now under the EEA umbrella as EEA community projects. We're very, very pleased to now say that we have member projects, we have community projects, and the goal for both is to end up with good quality standards. But the way the communities interact is different, just because there's a difference between member needs and perhaps community needs. So it was very important to us that on the community side, that we did not change the governance, okay? And I'm sure Guy will have more to say on that, but it was critical that we not change the governance. So we haven't, we've left that alone, and it operates just the way it does. But now we have an ability for the world to see that we can do all of this kind of standards development. If you have something that you want to develop, it doesn't matter whether the decision about what goes into it needs to be driven by a collection of business community members, or whether it needs to be driven by a community of open source developers. Either way, come to us. We'll help you figure out where the work belongs, and we'll help it move forward, because we are here to help mature the Ethereum ecosystem. This is part of the maturation of the ecosystem. And with that, I'll shut up. We've got a very short time. I'll let Guy speak now about.
Thanks, Dan. Well, Folks, as you can see from my new background here that my team just put together for something else, Oasis Open is about open standards and open source. And I'm celebrating a little more than a year. I have you beat by about 6 months, Dan, about a year and a half now at Oasis Open. And I come primarily from the open source world, where I help build open source program offices for places like Red Hat and Samsung and Autodesk. And so I'm coming into what was traditionally a very standards body at Oasis and bringing the open source perspective. And so I think that what Dan is talking about in terms of sort of the harmonization of open source and open standards, and Baseline being a great example of that, right? Taking their API, using that as the bones of the standard, but starting from the open source perspective, really fits with what I'm trying to do at Oasis. And so when Dan and the EEA approached us and said, hey, how do we take the enterprise Ethereum ecosystem and actually bring the open source pieces and the member driven pieces together, it was just a natural fit for us to say, hey, we already have this Ethereum Oasis Open project. Let's actually fold that in under the EEA, make the governance continue to stay the same. As a matter of fact, John Whalen, right, from your chair of the board, has said repeatedly, the governance is sacrosanct, right? It's really important that the process that we already have remains the same for a couple of reasons, not only because it has been proven to work over the years, but it also lets us take anything that comes in through this process and through this EEA community projects effort and potentially take that to de jure bodies like ISO, ITU, and others to make them international standards if that works out to be something that the community wants to do. But I really just look at this as a way to really bring that entire, again, Ethereum enterprise community together in a way that really, I think, serves the needs of both communities. And as Dan mentioned, right, there may be times people have sort of asked, as we made this announcement, okay, well, do we become a member of Oasis? Do we become a member of EEA? And the answer is, it kind of depends really on what makes the most sense. As Dan pointed out, if you're coming in and you're going to be doing primarily member-driven standards, the EEA is probably a great place to do that. If you're coming in and you want to participate in the EEA community projects, you don't even have to be a member of Oasis. It's an open project, so you can come in and participate. If you want to sponsor that work, kind of the community-based work, and then have also a seat on the governing board for those community projects, you would come in and be an Oasis member. But I think the thing that Dan and I have talked repeatedly, and this was a 10+ month process to make sure that this worked for both organizations. I think one of the things we've repeatedly said is we will help figure out, if you come and you're not sure, do I bring it in through the EEA? Do I bring it in through this EEA community projects? We're here to help you figure out what that means, because both organizations see a lot of value in really driving this ecosystem to be more inclusive and really bringing it under one big tent.
Thank you. Yes, we're really thrilled. I can say from the EA's perspective, we're very excited to be able to work with Oasis, who has just a wonderful reputation in standards development. I know we're short on time here. We will be doing a webinar on August 11th, where the two of us can talk in a lot more depth about this for longer. So at this point, I think we should probably wrap up and hand things back to James. But I want to say thank you again to Oasis. Thank you very much for this partnership, and it's been great working with you guys, and now I think helping in the maturation of the Ethereum ecosystem.
Awesome, thanks, Dan. We're tremendously excited as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks, guys.